Chapter 37. A Kiss. Phoebe was stunned and angry, but she was braver than I was. She could watch, but I could not. I assumed that Phoebe would follow me, but I didn't look back. Down the street, I tore, trying to remember where the bus stop was. It wasn't until I saw the hospital that I realized I must have missed the bus stop. I ducked inside and was surprised that Phoebe was not behind me. What I did next was an impulse, a hunch. I asked the hospital receptionist if I could see Mrs. Finney. She flipped through a roster. "Are you a family member?" she said. "No." "I'm afraid that you can't go up then," she said. "Mrs. Finney is on the psychiatric ward, family only." "I was looking for her son. He came here to visit her." "Maybe they went outside. You could look out back." Behind the hospital was a wide, sloping lawn bordered by flower gardens. Scattered across the lawn were benches and chairs, most of them occupied with patients and their visitors. It was a scene much like the one I had left at the university, except there was no one studying, and some of the people wore dressing gowns. Ben was sitting cross-legged on the ground in front of a woman in a pink robe. She fidgeted with the sash. Ben saw me and stood up, and I crossed the lawn. "This is my mother," he said. I said hello, but she didn't look at me. Instead, she stood and drifted off across the lawn as if we were not there. Ben and I followed. She reminded me so much of my mother after she returned from the hospital. My mother would stop right in the middle of doing something inside the house and walk out the door. Halfway up the hill, she would sit down to catch her breath. She picked at the grass, got up again, and went a little further. Sometimes my mother went into the barn and filled the pail with chicken feed. Before she reached the chicken coop, she set the pail down and moved off in another direction. When she could walk farther, my mother rambled over the fields and meadows in a weaving, snaking pattern, as if she could not make up her mind, which was to turn. We followed Ben's mother back and forth across the lawn, but she never seemed to notice our presence. At last I had to go, and that's when it happened. For a quick moment, we both had the same agenda. I looked at him, and he looked at me. Both of our heads moved forward. It must have been in slow motion, because I had a split second there to be reminded of Mr. Berkway's drawing of the two heads facing each other, with the vase in between. I wondered, just for an instant, if a vase could fit between us. If there had been a vase, we would have squashed it because our heads moved completely together and our lips landed in the right place, which was on the other person's lips. It was a real kiss, and it did not taste like chicken. And then our heads moved slowly backwards, and we stared out across the lawn, and I felt like the newly born horse who knows nothing but feels everything. Ben touched his lips. "Did it taste a little like blackberries to you?" he said. Chapter 38. Spit. At this point in my story, Graham interrupted. "Oh, yes, she said. "I've been waiting for that kiss for days. I do like a story with some good kisses in it." "She's such a gooseberry," Gramps said. We were churning through Montana. I didn't dare check our progress on the map. I didn't want to discover that we couldn't make it in time. I thought that if I kept talking and praying underneath, if we kept moving along in the mountainous roads, we had a chance. Graham said, "But what about Peavy? What about her mother kissing that lunatic?" I didn't like that kiss very much. It was the other one I liked, the one with Ben. I found Phoebe at the bus stop, sitting on the bench. "Where were you?" she asked. I did not tell her about seeing Ben or his mother. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I was afraid, Phoebe. I couldn't stay there. "And I thought you were the brave one," she said. "Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. I'm sick of it." "What happened?" "Nothing." They sat there on the bench having gay old times. If I could toss rocks like you can toss rocks, I'd have plunked them both in the back of the head. "Did you notice her hair? She cut it. It's short. And do you know what else she did? In the middle of talking, she leaned over and spit on the grass. Spit! It was disgusting. And the lunatic, do you know what he did when she spit? He laughed. Then he leaned over and he spit." "Why would you do that?" "Who knows? I'm sick of it. My mother can stay there for all I care. She doesn't need me. She doesn't need any of us." Phoebe was like that all the way home on the bus. She was in an extensively black mood. We got to Phoebe's house just as her father pulled in the driveway. Prudence rushed out of the house, saying, "She called, she called, she called. Mom called. She's coming home." "Terrific," Phoebe muttered. "What was that, Phoebe?" her father said. "Nothing." "She's coming tomorrow," Prudence said. "But what's wrong?" her father said. "What else did she say?" "She sounded nervous. She wanted to talk with you." "Did she leave a number? I'll call her back." "No, she didn't leave any number. She said to tell you not to make any prejudgments." "What is that supposed to mean?" her father said. "Not make any prejudgments about what?" "I don't know," Prudence said. "And oh, most important, she said that she would be bringing someone with her." "That's just grand," Phoebe said. "Just grand." "Phoebe?" her father said. "Prudence, did she say who she's bringing?" "I honestly can't say." "Did she refer to this person at all? Did she mention a name?" He was getting agitated. "Why, no," Prudence said. "She didn't mention a name. She just said that she was bringing him with her." "Him?" Phoebe looked at me. "Cripes," she said, and she went into the house, slamming the door behind her. I couldn't believe it. Wasn't she going to tell her father what she had seen? I was bursting at the seams to tell my own father, but when I got home, he and Margaret were sitting on the porch. Margaret said, "My brother told me you're in his English class. What a surprise." She must have already told my father this because he didn't look too surprised. "He's a terrific teacher. Do you like him?" "I suppose." I didn't want to talk about it. I wanted Margaret to vanish. I had to wait until she went home to tell my father about Phoebe's mother. And when I did tell him, all he said was, "So Mrs. Winterbottom is coming home. That's good." Then he went over to the window and stared out for the longest time, and I knew he was thinking about my mother. All that night I thought about Phoebe and Prudence and Mr. Winterbottom. It seemed like their whole world was going to fall apart, and the next day when Mrs. Winterbottom walked in, all cuddly with the lunatic.